Hi, friends. We
Good
survived
morning.
another work week, and welcome to episode 2 of CANNAfact Friday. So, if you're joining us for the first time today, which I'm sure a lot of you are, you might be wondering what the heck is CANNAfact Friday? Well, it's something that we do right here on LinkedIn Live every week on Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific, where we talk about stats and facts, consumer data from the cannabis industry, and then provide some context as well. And I'm Adriana Hemans. I'm VP of Strategy at ISA, an insights firm based in Los Angeles that specializes in cannabis consumer insights. And I'm here with my co-host, David Palischuk, who is the author of the first and the best-selling book on cannabis branding called Branding Bud, the Commercialization of Cannabis. Welcome, David.
Hey, Adriana. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. I'm pretty excited on our second CANNAfact Friday. We've got some really great things that we're trying to do here, like every week taking a data point or a statistic and contextualizing it so we understand what that data point means and how it affects us as we build our industry. And most importantly, we'll be bringing in some guests every week to chat about our data points and help us make some sense around that as well. So I should say, most importantly too, we want to hear from our viewers. So if anybody has a question along the way, please feel free to type it in the chat, and we will get to those questions a little bit later once we get through our second CANNAfact Friday. Right on.
Awesome.
Yeah,
So should we just jump in and do the stat? Are we ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let's do this. So for today's episode, we really wanted to tackle functional benefits. So first, probably we should define what a functional benefit is, right? So you can look at an example from outside of cannabis to understand what this could mean. Looking at the beverage space, there are beverages that have functional benefits because they have caffeine, or they might have vitamins infused, or they might have probiotics, for example, right? So that is the benefit above and beyond the beverage just tasting good and quenching your thirst. And in cannabis, there's a whole universe of functional benefits, which is super exciting to people who work in the industry and who work in product development and see these things unfold and come to life. There are, by some estimates, 80 to 100 cannabinoids that are naturally occurring in the plant. And each and every one of those may have a functional benefit. So there's really so many benefits to talk about, and we're only going to cover probably a few today, but just to give you a couple of examples, we all know it's very well documented THC, which is good for pain or good for increasing your appetite. But then there are also some emerging benefits that we're starting to see with some of the maybe lesser known cannabinoids like THCV, which has been known to help with curbing cravings for diet support. And then CBN is one that we see in a lot of sleep aids coming out on the market. So those are just a couple of examples, but there's literally probably thousands like this that you could point to. So people are excited to bring these into products, to see them in action, see what we can do with them. But what are consumers thinking? What are consumers looking for, and what benefits are they looking for when they go to a dispensary and when they purchase a product? So today's CANNAfact is from a survey we did asking consumers about functional benefits. We surveyed 1,000 consumers, and we asked them to tell us, what benefits do you get from the edibles that you're consuming? This was for edibles specifically. And the top three across the board, 65% are looking for anxiety reduction, 65% for pain relief, 61% for sleep aid. Those are the top three. And I should mention too, this is a multiple select. So people could select more than one benefit that they were consuming edibles for. So this was interesting, right? But not exactly groundbreaking. You see this a lot. You see people explaining what those benefits are. These top three benefits are really commonly cited. So then we wanted to go a little deeper and look at, does this differ depending on the age group of the people that you're talking to? So we split it. We cut the data by age ranges, and then we looked at the 40 to 49-year-old group. And this group, interestingly, are the ones who are most likely to say that they want a sleep aid, that they get better sleep, and that's the benefit from consuming edibles. And then we looked at the 30 to 39-year-old group, and they were the ones that were most seeking the anxiety relief benefit, which I thought that was really interesting to sort of see those differences, life stage, different, stages of your life that make you pursue a product for different reasons, even if it's the same product. So I think that's really, really telling. Any thoughts on what we showed so far, David?
Yeah, I think I think it's interesting. My first thought is everybody seems to be tired, anxious, and really needs wants to be accepted and loved, right? I think we all have some basic needs, and in these days and times, we seem to be struggling to to even get maybe some of the basic stability that we crave in our life. So
Mm-hmm.
it's no surprise that people are more anxious now, certainly in the last few years than they've ever been. And it's interesting to see how it appeals to people at different ages in their life stage.
Mm-hmm.
But there's definitely a thread, and I think we're all suffering a little bit from that. It's interesting to see across the board that basically, depending on the percentage, essentially we're all seeking the same things, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that's interesting. I
Right.
also think what you just said a moment ago is using the same product for for different benefits,
Mm-hmm.
and I think too that has to do with the type of consumer, uh, and are they open, are they open to cannabis, are they shifting away from a particular product, an opioid for example, and now shifting over to cannabis to help them or alleviate their pain. So I think there's different mindsets and rituals involved, and all different things that come into play as we look for components or constituents to add to our body to help us and alleviate some of the things we're feeling and to
Yeah,
cope with those.
absolutely. And even with these two benefits, anxiety and sleep, you could probably say, well, they're related, right? If you have anxiety, you won't be able to sleep at night. But these two benefits can kind of be rolled into one. So maybe this is a difference of people that are in that older age category, slightly older age category. They're just more willing to come out and say what they're looking for, or maybe just like the way that we describe things from generation to generation. So maybe a more similar than we think in that respect. But I think you could make the argument in either case.
Absolutely, and people are anxious throughout the day as well. So
Hmm.
typically an anxious person needs to alleviate that anxiety in one way, shape, or form during the day, and that follows them into the evening, right? So while they're sitting there in their bed, counting sheep, it's also tough to get to sleep when you're feeling that.
Counting sheep or counting how many edibles you have left to get you through the week.
That's right. Till the next CANNAfact Friday.
So, one more thing I wanted to touch upon while we're still exploring stats here is we also cut this one additional way that I want to share with you, and that is looking at the difference between casual consumers and regular consumers. The thinking here was, well, maybe people who are taking edibles more casually haven't fully discovered the benefits, or maybe people who are taking them regularly are looking for something that's more medicinal and less recreational. But I'll just share with you what we found. So for the purposes of this study, we defined a regular edibles consumer as someone who had at least one session per week, at least. And a lot of them, it was much more than one. And then for the casual consumer, these were the people who were consuming a few times a month up to a few times a year. So not part of their regular everyday ritual. And there was a difference here too in terms of what the functional benefits were that they were looking for. So for context, both regular and casual consumers are about equally likely to say that they're looking for social enhancement and anxiety reduction. Again, that anxiety is always the top of everybody's list. But then you see a little bit of a difference when you look at sleep, energy, pain, and creativity. These are all areas where the more regular consumers are more likely to say, yes, these are the benefits I'm looking for, which I thought that was interesting too, because it makes you think, okay, well, is it that when you start consuming edibles casually, you go, wow, there's all these other benefits, and then you start consuming more and more? Or is it that they know about it already and it becomes part of their daily habit? So I think it could really go either way, but it's interesting to see that some things are the same across casual and regular, and some things there's really a difference.
Yeah, it is interesting to see that, and again, I think it's almost where they enter the matrix, if you will. I always think about I always talk about additive and subtractive products, right? So a subtractive product is one that, and this comes from much of your research, from ISA's research, which is, um, the subtractive product is really something that alleviates pain, and and in that, you come to that with a certain mindset, right?
Yeah.
But the other side of it is, if you're looking for inspiration, if you're looking to focus, if you're looking for creativity, that's
Yep.
a completely different mindset. So depending on how you're coming at these products, um, and what your need state is, and ritual, and those types of things, i think I think that question is, which comes first? Is it the chicken or the egg? But
Mm-hmm.
I think over time, as benefit specific cannabis products become more well known, become more normalized, and as more and more people make products to either alleviate pain or address certain benefits, um, I think people will start to take that on. Um,
Mm-hmm.
as you said earlier, there are products in the market, many products in the market right now. You mentioned THCV, you mentioned CBG or CBN. There's also CBG, which helps with inflammation and pain and nausea. So there's all sorts of cannabinoids that can be used for different types of products. Um, THCV, which is really often geared toward, and we'll speak with Angela Pai in a moment, and she'll talk about her brand that she created and some of the cannabinoids that she's included. But they're there for specific reasons. Some of them appeal toward different genders for different reasons, and it's interesting to start to see that. So I think people are coming at it from all different directions, whether they're using benefit specific cannabis products to get away from other things they're consuming right now, or maybe they're just alternatives, and like you just said, they're using cannabis and they're seeing other opportunities to use it in other aspects of their life. So
Yeah.
I think it goes all ways.
Yeah, definitely. And really excited to hear from Angela too, who's about to come out, who's an absolute powerhouse in cannabis marketing, because also we'll start to see, as marketers start to promote some of these benefits more, how that will change the public's perception and what they're going after. So yeah, let's get her out here.
All right. And I'm going to, hello, Angela.
Hi. How are you? Good morning. Happy
Thanks for
Friday.
joining us. Happy
Thank
Friday.
you.
We're so excited to have you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I would like to do the official introduction, Angela, because you really deserve an official introduction. You've got such a resume. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to read to make sure I get it all right. But Angela is a creative marketer who has successfully partnered and guided many industry-leading Fortune 100 companies. She was named by The Drum as a top female talent of color in 2018. And before entering the cannabis industry, she was the CMO for the fashion brand Halston. And once entering the cannabis industry, she was the CMO for Papa and Barkley. And then after Papa and Barkley was the CMO at CANNACraft, two of California's best known producer processors. She's also the creator of Gem and Jane, which is a cannabis infused beverage, which is designed by women for women, which includes cannabinoids, just like we're talking about, THCV and some others, which are benefit specific. And most recently, congratulations, Angela, you were inducted into the Rolling Stones Culture Council, which is very cool as well.
Whoa,
So,
congrats.
yeah, you're just like nonstop, and we're so lucky to have you here. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you. I feel that every opportunity we have to be able to credential cannabis marketers and cannabis talent in what I would consider to be sort of like mass marketing type of field, it helps all of us when they see that there's this level of discipline and sophistication within our industry that's still considered to be so young and so new amongst all the other industries out there. So yeah, going to put our names out there every day.
That's right. Normalizing the industry and what we do. Thank you.
100%.
That's right. Cool.
That's awesome. And part of that normalization too is talking about consumers' experiences and what they're going through and how they're experiencing that normalization too, both within their families and their communities and just in our sort of global culture that we're experiencing. So Angela, having heard the stats we threw out, I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are. I know there was kind of a lot, but any sort of initial reaction to that?
Absolutely. Just in terms of, consumers looking for relief, whether it's pain, anxiety, looking for more sleep, and really looking at cannabis products for functional benefits, right? So in a highly regulated industry such as ours, it's very challenging for us to actually make claims in terms of how something's supposed to work. So you do have to be very judicious in terms of what you say. And also, cannabis is very much a personal journey. How a certain cannabinoid and the potency of it affects you might be very, very different to the way that it makes me feel. So you can infer, you can suggest, most people feel a certain way. But ultimately, it's very much a personal journey in terms of dosing and effect.
One of the things that we always seem to speak about is, we always start off with the customer and who the product's designed for. Would you tell us a little bit about that? How you determine who your audience is, and even especially not only because you've created Gem and Jane, but also because you were the CMO at CANNAfact, and at CANNAfact they really do have so many brands, from the farmer and the felon to you name it. They're really appealing to different cannabis consumers. So can you talk about knowing the customer and creating the brand for them?
Absolutely. My approach to marketing is really not just about brand awareness and brand design and brand build, which I think predominantly that's what we focus on in terms of package design and brand awareness. Who's heard about it? From my perspective, a marketer is successful when we've actually been able to change behavior. And in order to change behavior, you kind of have to understand where people are coming from to begin with. So who are we designing for? What do they need within their day? What are they currently using for that particular, call it a condition? And what are their potential solutions? And how can I help that person become more conversant in terms of a wide array of products, in terms of access to cannabis products? And how are they behavior-wise using those products on a daily basis, that I can find those opportunities either to provide a certain amount of education, generate trial, and hopefully gain some level of repeat behavior. So with behavior being fundamental to the success of marketing in terms of everything that we do, whether we're asking you to advocate for a product or a brand that you use, or you are just a loyal consumer who's coming back on a consistent basis. So fundamentally, it's about, I need to know as much about the consumer and the various segments who we target and we market to as possible. Now, that's obviously a very different consumer who is a predominant, say, a flower and a pre-roll consumer versus a consumer who's really looking for tinctures and soft gels on the wellness side. And when we're talking about lifestyle brands that are edibles and beverages, then we're really looking at different types of usage habits as well. So many ways in terms of how we can hone the behaviors, how are they looking for products and brands at a dispensary, how often are they going into a dispensary, and are they someone who's loyal to certain brands, or are they really open to trying new things all the time? So all of those factors really play in. So that's bringing in your headset data, your BDSA data, your iHeartJane data, your own information from your own database and email marketing, and working with retailers to kind of really ask them, ask the buyers and bud tenders, who are you seeing coming into the store? How much are they spending? How many products are they buying at the same time, and how often are they coming in? So everything from the quantitative data that we're able to gather, and also the qualitative data just by asking insightful questions.
Right. That's very important. You know, the way you just laid that out is so beautiful, and in many ways you talk about or you certainly implied, you know, being a thought leader, being an educator. So it's not only about brand awareness and building brand, it's about education as well. But being a thought leader, I'm curious, how does your fashion background translate? Because as well, as a CMO at Halston or any high-end fashion brand, you are people are looking to you, you know, to lead the next trend, to call out the next trend. So, how do you take those skills and leverage them into the cannabis space? I'm curious.
I think you really dive in from a segmentation standpoint. So if you look at the consumer and then you look at your product development and your product pipeline. So from the consumer side, really understand your consumer and who you want to develop most within your target group. Let's say you are a brand that's aging out. And you really want to introduce your brand to younger consumers so that you're really finding the type segments of consumers that are more robust. So you're not just speaking to one narrow audience, but you're speaking to several audiences. So let's say with Papa and Barkley, you have your active aging consumer who are perhaps a little bit older, and they have different types of needs to continue to stay active and mobile throughout the day, versus your health conscious hustler who's your female millennial who's really looking for wellness, and she's your gatekeeper to wellness products into the home. So she's looking for alternative ways and more plant-based solutions into living a healthier lifestyle. Or you have someone who we named our peak performance seeker. He's probably the more male skew type of audience who's burning the candle at both ends. He might be your tech executive who's also an active athlete during the weekend. So all of them have different, call it persona, right? All of them have different habits. They're seeking wellness or fitness solutions from different products throughout their day and their week. So based off of that, then you start thinking about, what do I have within my portfolio of brands and products that can really meet their needs and meet them where they are when they're looking for them? So I think that's where with cannabis, and then we think about fashion, it does fundamentally start from who are you speaking to, who you're designing for, what do you know about them, and what do I have within my portfolio of brands and products that can meet those unmet needs or get them to switch from what they're currently consuming into something that I have within my portfolio. Say with Halston, we were really looking at bringing in a younger subset of female women who are looking for flexibility in terms of their wardrobe. They can go from desk to dinner. So what can we develop within our products that suit that desk to dinner type of lifestyle versus just the occasion dressing of weddings and parties and special occasions. So then really looking at our products. So that's not that dissimilar to what I kind of just talked about with Papa and Barkley with the different segments. Again, I have 36 products. What do I have within the arsenal of topicals and ingestibles that can meet the needs of those three different segments. So understanding who they are, what are their habits, what do I have, and what do I need to develop from an innovation pipeline to continue to be at the forefront of introducing new products. So I knew that we're going to get to talk about different types of cannabinoids and minor cannabinoids. Those are always very interesting, you know, beyond the CBD and THC cannabinoids that we talk about predominantly, as we look at, well, what are the features and benefits? You know, what is it about the product functionality?
Right.
Angela, I'm so glad that you brought up segments, and your health conscious hustler sounds very similar to our version of it that we developed looking at the cannabis market that we call the self-care seeker. So it's probably better for our audience that we did decide to tackle that today, because I could go on and on and on about segments all day, but maybe that's a topic for another time. But yeah, it's exciting to kind of see those overlaps and how people, for me, it's just exciting when they come to life, right? When you know who they are, they're like a real person. You could almost give them a name and feel like they're a friend of yours. So that's always really fun. And then I was hoping that you might humor me for a moment, and I'll share another stat with you and get your take on it. Is that fair to do?
Totally.
Because I know you love data, so you're just going to be drowning in it
Data.
with us today. Okay, so this is from a beverage survey, a survey of beverage consumers. And because you have your beverage line, I think that you'll definitely have an opinion on this one. We looked at the functional benefits across gender for beverages specifically. And what we found is that there's somewhat of a difference in what men and women are looking for in the beverage category. So some are the same, right? If you look at sleep, it's about the same. But in two categories that I thought were really interesting, anxiety and energy, there were some differences. So women were more likely to say that they were consuming a beverage to help with their anxiety. And men were more likely to say that they were consuming a beverage to help them with energy, as an energy booster. I'm curious if you've encountered that before, your initial reaction to that stat.
I can see that data being resonant in terms of resonating in terms of what we've seen as well, in terms of women looking for something that's going to relieve their sense of anxiety, or, you know, what they accumulate throughout the day, and maybe that swapping out of that cocktail or a glass of wine for a cannabis beverage that just takes the edge off, right? It takes the edge off. It helps them relax when they're unwinding, versus, say, with the male respondents that you've seen looking for that energy boost to kind of keep going, and drive through a workout, or, you know, drive through the day that kind of keeps them at a certain pace. So I can definitely see that working out in terms of how we have aligned to those types of, you know, preferences.
Yeah, with Gem and Jane specifically, was that your vision for who your customer would be and what they would be using it for, drinking it for?
Well, for Gem and Jane, because it's a brand that's created for women by women, we really saw through the data that women are driving consumption of beverages across every single demographic.
Mm-hmm.
Just, you know, regardless of age group, it was really women who are driving the velocity of cannabis beverages. We wanted to create a beverage specifically for them. And at the microdose level, where we are looking at opportunities to kind of grow the market, so bringing in consumers who are not necessarily cannabis consumers, who are then looking into swapping out an alcohol-based beverage for a cannabis-based infused beverage. So for her, we definitely looked at minor cannabinoids and how they predominantly might make you feel, whether it's the THCV for focus and for drive, or a cannabis-derived delta-8, which gives you that sort of like rounder and lower psychoactivity. But just takes the edge off, and they're super yummy.
And would you tell us the flavor profiles quickly?
Absolutely. The two THCV SKUs is California's only non-flavored seltzer water. That's a simple seltzer that's in the blue can. And also the Yuzu Raspberry Rose is also a THCV. And then the other three SKUs are Elderflower Pear, Strawberry Hibiscus, and Lemon Blueberry Lavender. So they're quite a beautiful combination of botanical flavors that
Sounds
have layers of
delicious.
flavor to them. And they're all super low calorie, no sugar. It's really agave, sweetened with agave, and very, very clean labeling.
Interesting. One of the things there too that I think, again, taking from the fashion world, you've created a product, which is truly a product, but you've fitted into a lifestyle, right? You've created a product which is all about sessioning, which is all about, so low dose. You can hang out with your friends. You can session. Um, you can substitute it for alcohol, and it is all about lifestyle. So, well, it is about lifestyle and the benefits that come with it. But you've it doesn't surprise me that you were a CMO at a high fashion company, because you're following that roadmap. I could see the cues you're taking and the steps you're taking make total sense, and it's working, right? So in many ways, cannabis products are consumer product good products. They are fashion and lifestyle products, and all of those elements come into it. So I see how you've taken your experience and brought it to the cannabis industry and peppered your new products in a way that really speak to consumers, and then educate those people that need to be brought a little further down the road.
So as we're looking at the sort of, and a lot of people do talk about the CPG, the consumer packaged goods approach to cannabis marketing, and bringing in cues from mass market or even premium lifestyle type brands into cannabis, and looking at it from the standpoint of, something that we haven't talked about. It's really looking at the storytelling. What is the story about your brand? What is it about your brand's origin story that really hits home, how it was created, why it exists, and how it can help you, all the way down to, say, with product design. When you go to a dispensary nowadays, products look really sophisticated compared to what it looked like 2 or 3 years ago.
Mhm.
So we are shopping with our eyes at dispensaries now in a way that we weren't before. So sophistication of design of packaging. How does the packaging actually connote the story of your brand? How's the bud tender able to be able to pick up your product and really be able to look at, oh, what are the minor cannabinoids in the formulation, and how can I help a potential shopper understand what's in it, how to use it, and how it can help them feel.
Right, absolutely. So we're speaking about data and how data is used here. What data points do you feel are missing? Are there components or metrics within the industry that are missing?
Yep. Data at the store. From a brand perspective, we get, again, headset, BDSA, you can get your pistol data, and we know what our velocity of sell-through is. But at the same time, when you really think about, we're kind of like missing retail data here. Like, what's going on at the store from a quantitative standpoint as well as a qualitative standpoint. So both headset and BDSA probably covers, I don't know, anywhere from 30 to 35% of the market. So there's still a missing gap in terms of what's being reported and not being reported. So you're still extrapolating maybe 1/3 of the data that's available and using that as your quantitative read on what's happening in terms of sales. But when you're looking at, well, what's happening at the dispensary, what's the foot traffic? What is the velocity of repeat? What's the loyalty that's happening in addition to, just the general nuts and bolts of trade marketing? If you're on shelf and you have X number of facings, how's that driving your sales versus having a full display or having X number of activations per month at certain types of dispensaries. So I really do see the blind spot within our industry as what's happening in terms of retail marketing and proper merchandising.
I completely
Plus
agree
bud,
with that.
plus bud tender education. I am so passionate about bud tender education that both at Popham and Barkley and at CANNAfact, I've been a huge advocate in terms of also building bud tender customized education programs for both companies that I had worked at.
I'm so
Right.
glad you brought that up, Angela. And sorry I disappeared for a minute there. I read another interview that you did or heard it that you like to visit dispensaries and have your ear to the ground and see firsthand what bud tenders are saying and what they're telling people and the information they're giving. I'm curious, like how you kind of put them through their paces. And sorry, this is sort of an add-on question, but what do you look for when you encounter a bud tender in the wild? What's the criteria you use to see if they're giving your brand or the category itself a fair shake?
Sure. It depends whether I'm going in as a secret shopper, so I'm just pretending to be a consumer, or I'm very transparent from the get-go that I will let them know I'm representing certain brands and I would love to hear about what their experience is with the brands that, I'm, repping, so to speak. So I probably go to 3 to 5 dispensaries per week. My initial contact is, how are they friendly? Well, let's speak specifically about bud tenders and not about the whole thing about wait time and reception interaction, which are all sort of like part of the hospitality side of things, like the softer aspects of it. But let's just talk about the bud tender interaction. I look for, are they engaging me in almost like an intake? What am I coming in for? Or are they asking me what I want? Or are they actually being much more of, how do I put it, a guided type of shopping experience, where they'll take the time to ask me, oh, are you a current consumer of cannabis? What type of products are you using? Why are you buying these products in the past? And can I introduce you to XYZ, that we have at the store that we've seen a lot of people say good things about? So are they able to navigate me through a really well thought through shopping experience, or are they just asking me for what I want and trying to get me out of the store within 5 minutes? So I always look for that level of interaction. I think that helps because then people come back to a store more often because they have a good experience. Over the last couple of months, I've been working with the team over at Oasis to actually look at the retail shopping experience and what are the key factors that brings people back to a store over and over again.
Interesting. Yeah. I'd be so curious to hear about that. I mean, it varies so much, even probably from state to state. But definitely like getting that one-on-one interaction. And some bud tenders, immediately that they have no idea what they're talking about. And others, you're like, wow, you are an encyclopedia of knowledge. I need to just pick your brain and talk to you for 2 hours.
And it's also too, as Angela just said, the approach, which is, are they trying to pitch you and sell you something from the get-go, or are they really interested in what your needs are? And Headset, this is an old report actually, but Headset did do a report on bud tender churn, and one of the stats that I remember seeing was 50% of all bud tenders leave within the first month or by the end of the first month, and another 50% by the second month, which really means they're turning over their bud tenders every 2 months. I I don't know if that's a high turn rate. It sounds like that to me. I have no idea what the churn rate is at McDonald's, for example. To sort of compare those. I'm sure a lot of it has to do with bud tenders coming in over the summer, and they want a discount on their weed while they're home for the summer. I'm sure there's lots of different things, but I also feel like until there's a career path for bud tenders, and like a sommelier or something similar, where you get paid and respected for the education of knowledge you have. I think that's important, and I think that will help bud tenders better address consumer needs over time if we take care of the bud tenders and offer a career.
I, I I agree wholeheartedly. That career path for bud tenders, the more as an industry we prove that, I think the greater service that we can provide for consumers altogether. And in addition to the churn stat, on average, what I've heard is 6 months in terms of bud tender tenure at a dispensary. So maybe that might be a longer time period than the 1 to 2 months that you had mentioned. And also, about 70% of consumers are open or undecided when they're walking into the dispensary.
Right.
So if you're looking at 7 out of 10 people going into a dispensary are really open to new ideas in terms of what they will actually purchase and walk out of the store with. That's a pretty high percentage of people that bud tender is able to sway. And there are also a couple of things at the retail level that I'm often a little bit baffled by is bud tenders who are recommending products that they've not tried themselves because brands or stores haven't actually sampled the bud tenders. I find that very challenging because how do I, let's say I'm on the other side of the counter, how can I really trust that the recommendation of the bud tender if they haven't actually tried that product or that brand themselves?
That's true, and I
Yeah.
feel like I totally understand that. I often question that myself, and then I come back with people really are have individual and unique reactions or responses to their consumption of cannabis. So just because it affected a bud tender one way, it might not affect me that way. And I think that's probably one of the biggest issues, is the consistency, and not only in the consumption of cannabis, but even in the brand development of cannabis. Because I always say it, a brand is a promise, and the consistency to consistently deliver on that promise. So if your experience is one thing and my experience is another, it's it it could be a problem from a brand perspective, right?
Yeah, 100%. And then there's something also, and you know, this is like one of my bones, is the lack of MSRP at the retail level. Like, how you develop consumer trust when the product that you're buying is, let's say it's $50, right? It's $50 in one store, but it's $75 at another store. But then when it's on deal, it's like $30. So how much is something really worth? I think the lack of MSRP within our industry actually hurts us because it confuses the consumer when they're really thinking about the value of a brand, the value of a product, and that the reliability of what it is they're actually purchasing. So I hope this is something that we as an industry are able to correct. It helps us if we know how much something costs and what something is valued at.
Right, absolutely. I have another question for you, sort of a side question. You mentioned earlier that approximately 70% of people going into a adult use cannabis store or dispensary are not necessarily aware of what they're going to buy. And over the course of the pandemic, with the delivery services offering products or curbside delivery, is there? I'll ask it two ways. Are there new challenges now for cannabis companies, and/or are there new opportunities for cannabis companies? Because now, if they didn't know what they wanted, if a consumer didn't know what they want, or 70% of them wasn't sure about what they wanted before they walked into the adult use store, and now they're rolling up in front to pick up what they're purchasing, it almost seems like the education now has been, to a certain degree, taken off the shoulders of the bud tender and now back on the brand, who has to really educate the potential consumer before they even get to the store, because they may not even go into the store. Is it it's that last mile, so to speak. Are there new opportunities for other types of companies or for brands to get in that last mile before they get to the store?
There are. If you look at channels where consumers can find out more about a brand, if you're doing a Google search, you're looking at the social handle for the brands, or they're hearing about it from their friends. I think the the opportunity for consumers to really learn about new products and brands within our industry is still very limited. And so there is this reliance on bud tenders. But then we still had hundreds of brands that launched during the pandemic, even though there wasn't, in-person interaction. And thank goodness there was still the opportunity of people being able to walk into a dispensary, since it was considered essential, right? Mm-hmm. Again, back to the data, I know that the more tech savvy dispensaries within the state of California are seeing maybe 55 to 60% of walk-in traffic, maybe 55%, the sort of like the NorCal dispensaries that are much more tech oriented, they're still seeing maybe 55%. So let's say 45% of their purchases or their conversions are happening online and with curbside pickup. So that's on the high side, right? To maybe the less tech savvy, less delivery dependent dispensaries, they're seeing still 75% of their conversions happening at the store. So even though the pandemic had restricted access or at least our ability to go out, there's still a significant number of conversions, anywhere from 1 out of 2 or 2 out of 3 purchases are still happening in store. So what's happening at the store level is still very critical.
Right. Interesting. There's lots of opportunity. So what's your biggest focus for 2022?
2022 is about co-opetition. So I've been kind of like shouting it from the rooftops since January 1st, and as you've seen that on my LinkedIn.
I've heard it.
Our industry is still young and growing. It's not a significant move to kind of just steal shares from brand to brand, but I think a much better opportunity for competitive brands to work together, to collaborate, to grow the industry together, from education, from expanding consumer knowledge, to improving and normalizing cannabis products across wellness and rec. So more opportunities to collaborate across categories, to collaborate with competitors, so that we can lift each other up. So for me, that's absolutely my focus. It's about co-opetition.
Right on.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Angela. We're heading to the end of our time together, and I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a really fun and enlightening conversation. And before we say goodbye, anything else that you want to mention? Where can people find you? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
I'm fairly active on LinkedIn, so that's a great platform to be able to find me. It's just my whole name, Angela Pye, Angela Pih. I respond to all of my messages, so if you message or DM me on LinkedIn, I'll definitely respond, and happy to provide any kind of feedback and answers that people might have questions for.
Fantastic.
Yeah, that's great. Well, wow. Thank you, Angela, so much for your time today and your insight. Every time I speak with you, I learn more. I totally enjoy our conversations all the time. So, and I think you know that too. Thank you for that. Thanks for coming today. Thanks for being our first guest on CANNAfact Friday.
Girl guest.
That's right. We thought for sure you should be our first guest, just because you are so data driven and so creative. So we just love you, and thanks for spending time with us today. Next week we're going to be next Friday at 10 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, 1 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we will be chatting with Warren Bobrow about his new beverage, Klaus. And we'll be talking about various data points in terms of what people are looking for, in terms of how he went about developing his product as well. So we'll be talking about that. We're excited to bring these conversations to you every Friday, and we hope you'll keep joining us. And again, Angela, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Until next time, have a great weekend, everybody.
Right on. Thank God it's CANNAfact Friday. Have a great day. Bye, everybody.
Bye.